Principle 2. Give honest and sincere appreciation. He who can do this has the whole world with him. He who cannot walks a lonely way. I often went fishing up in Maine during the summer. Personally, I am very fond of strawberries and cream, but I have found that for some reason fish prefer worms. So when I went fishing, I didn't think about what I wanted. I didn't bait the hook. I didn't bait the hook with strawberries and cream. Rather, I dangled a worm on a grasshopper in front of the fish and said, "Wouldn't you like to have that?" Why not use the same common sense when fishing for people? That is what Lloyd George, Great Britain's Prime Minister during World War One did. When someone asked him how he managed to stay in power after the other wartime leaders, Wilson Orlando Clemenceau had been forgotten. He replied that if his staying on top might be attributed to any one thing, it would be to his having learned that it was necessary to bait the hook to suit the fish. Why talk about what we want? That is childish. Absurd, of course. You are interested in what you want. You are internally interested in it, but no one else is. The rest of us are just like you. We are interested in what we want. So the only way on earth to influence other people is to talk about what they want and show them how to get it. Remember that tomorrow when you are trying, remember that tomorrow when you are trying to get somebody to do something. If, for example, you don't want your children to smoke, don't preach at them and don't talk about what you want, but show them that cigarettes may keep them from making the basketball team or winning the 100-yard dash. This is a good thing to remember regardless of whether you are dealing with children or cows or chimpanzees. For example, one day, Ralph Waldo Emerson and his son tried to get a calf into the barn, but they made the mistake of thinking only of what they wanted. Emerson pushed and his son pulled, but the calf was only doing just what they were doing. He was thinking only of what he wanted. So he stiffened his legs and stubbornly refused to leave the pasture. The Irish housemaid saw their predicament. She couldn't write essays and books, but on this occasion at least, she had more horse sense or calf sense than Emerson had. She thought of what the calf wanted. So she put her maternal finger in the calf's mouth and let the calf suck her finger, accidentally lured him into the barn. Every act you have performed since the day you were born was performed because you wanted something. How about the time you gave a large contribution to the Red Cross? Yes, that is no exception to the rule. You gave the Red Cross the donation because you wanted to lend a helping hand. You wanted to do a beautiful, selfish, unselfish, divine act. In as much as we have done it unto one of the best, unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. If you hadn't wanted a feeling more than you wanted your money, you would not have made the contribution. Of course, you might have made the contribution because you were ashamed to refuse or because the customer asked you to do it. But one thing is certain, you made the contribution because you wanted something. Harry A. Overstreet, in his illuminating book, Influencing Human Behavior, said, "Action springs out of what we fundamentally desire." And the best price of piece of advice which can be given to would-be persuaders, whether in business, in the home, in the school, in politics, is first, arouse with the other person an eager want. He who can do this has the whole world with him. He who cannot walks a lonely way. Andrew Carnegie, the poverty-stricken Scotch lad who started to work at 2 cents an hour and finally gave away $365 million, learned early in life that the only way to influence people is to talk in terms of what the other person wants. He attended school only 4 years, yet he learned how to handle people. To illustrate, his sister-in-law was worried sick over at two boys. They were at Yale and they were so busy with their own affairs that they neglected to write home and paid no attention whatsoever to their mother's frantic letters. Then Carnegie offered to wager $100 that he could get an answer by return mail without even asking for it. Someone called his bet, so he wrote his nephews a chatty letter, mentioning casually in a postscript that he was sending each one a $5 bill. He neglected, however, to enclose the money. Back came the replies by returning mail thanking dear Uncle Andrew for his note, and you can finish the sentence yourself. Another example of persuading comes from Stan Novak of Cleveland, Ohio, a participant in our course. Stan came home from work one evening to find his younger son, Tim, kicking and screaming on the living room floor. He was to start kindergarten the next day and was protesting that he would not go. Stan's normal reaction would have been to banish the child to his room and tell him he'd better make up his mind to go. He had no choice. But tonight, recognizing that this would not really help Tim start kindergarten in the best frame of mind. Stan sat down and thought, if I were Tim, why would I be excited about going to kindergarten? He and his wife made a list of all the fun things Tim would do, such as finger painting, singing songs, making new friends. Then they put them into action. We all started finger painting on the kitchen table. My wife, Lil, my other son Bob, and myself all having fun. Soon, Tim was peeping around the corner. Next was begging to participate. Oh no, you have to go to kindergarten first to learn how to finger paint. With all the enthusiasm I could muster, I went through the list talking in terms he could understand, telling him all the fun he would have in kindergarten. The next morning, I thought I was the first one up when I went downstairs and found Tim sitting sound asleep in the living room chair. What are you doing? I asked. I am waiting to go to kindergarten. I don't want to be late. The enthusiasm of our entire family had aroused in Tim an eager want that no amount of discussion or threat could have possibly accomplished. Tomorrow, you may want to persuade somebody to do something. Before you speak, pause and ask yourself, how can I make this person want to do it? That question will stop us from rushing into a situation heedlessly, with footer chatter about our desires. At one time, I rented the grand ballroom of a certain New York hotel for 20 nights in each season in order to hold a series of lectures. At the beginning of one season, I was suddenly informed that I should have to pay almost 3 times as much rent as formerly. This news reached me after the tickets had been printed and distributed, and all the announcements had been made. Naturally, I didn't want to pay the increase, but what was the use of talking to the hotel about what I wanted? They were only interested in what they wanted. So a couple of days later, I went to see the manager. I was a bit shocked when I got a letter, I said, but I don't blame you at all. If I had been in your position, I should probably have written a similar letter myself. Your duty as a manager of the hotel is to make all the profits possible. If you don't do that, you'll be fired and you ought to be fired. Now, let's take a piece of paper and write down the advantages and disadvantages that will accrue to you if you insist in increase in rent. Then I took a letterhead and ran a line through the center and added one column advantages and the other column disadvantages. I wrote down under the head advantages this word ballroom free. Then I went to say you will have the advantage advantage of having the ballroom free to rent for dances and conventions. This is a big advantage. For affairs like that, we pay you much more than you can get for a series of lectures. If I tie a ballroom up for 20 nights during the course of the season, it is sure to make a loss of some very profitable business to you. Now let's consider the disadvantages. First, instead of increasing your income from me, you are going to decrease it. It is a fact. You are going to wipe it out because I cannot pay the rent you are asking. I shall be forced to hold this lecture at some other place. There is another disadvantage to you also. This lecture attracts crowds of educated and cultured people to your hotel. This is good advertising for you, isn't it? In fact, if you spent $5,000 advertising in the newspaper, you couldn't bring as many people to look at your hotel as I bring by these lectures. This is what a lot of hotel, a lot to a hotel, isn't it? As I talked, I wrote these two disadvantages under the proper heading and handed the sheet of paper to the manager saying, I wish you would really consider both the advantages and disadvantages that are going to accrue to you and then give me your final decision. I received a letter the next day informing me that my rent will be increased only 50% instead of 300%. Mind you, I got this reduction without saying a word about what I wanted. I talked all the time about what the other person wanted and how he could get it. Suppose I had done the human natural thing. Suppose I had stormed into his office and said, what do you mean by raising my rent 300% when you know the ticket had been printed and announcements made? 300%? Ridiculous, absurd, I won't pay it. What would have happened then? An argument would have begun to steam and boil and sputter. And you know how arguments end. Even if I had convinced him that it was wrong, his pride would have made it difficult for him to back down and give in. Here is one of the best bits of advice ever given about the fine art of human relations. If there is anyone's secret of success, said Henry Ford, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as from your own. That is so good. I want to repeat it. If there is anyone's secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as from your own. That is so simple. So obvious that anyone ought to see the truth of it at a glance. Yet, 90% of the people on this earth ignore it 90% of the time. An example, look at the letters that come across your desk tomorrow morning. You will find that most of them violate this important canon of common sense. Take this one, a letter written by the head of the radio department of an advertising agency with offices scattered across the continent. This letter was sent to the managers of local radio stations throughout the country. I have set down in brackets my reactions to each paragraph. Mr. John Blank, Blankville, Indiana. Dear Mr. Blank, the company desires to retain its position in advertising agency leadership in the radio field. Who cares? Who cares about your company desires? I am worried about my own problems. The bank is foreclosing the mortgage on my house. The bugs are destroying the oligarchs. The stock market stumbled yesterday. I missed the 8:15 this morning. I wasn't invited to the Jones dance last night. The doctor tells me I have high blood pressure and neuritis and dandruff. And then what happens? I come down to the office this morning worried, open my mail, and here is some little whisper snapper off in New York yapping about what his company wants. But if you only realize what sort of impression this letter makes, it would get out of the advertising business and start manufacturing sheep dip. This agency's national advertising accounts were the bulwarks of the network. Our subsequent clearances of station time have kept us at the top of agencies year after year. You are big and rich from right at the top, are you? So what? I don't give two hopes or A's if you are as big as General Motors, and General Electric, and the general staff of the US Army all combined. If you had as much sense as the outwitted Omibed, you would realize that I am interested in how big I am, not how big you are. All this talk about your enormous success makes me feel small and unimportant. We desire to service our accounts with the last word on radio station information. You desire, you desire, you unmitigated ass. I am not interested in what you desire or what the President of the United States desires. Let me tell you once and for all that I am interested in what I desire. And you haven't said a word about that yet in this letter of yours. Will you therefore put the company on your preferred list for weekly station information? Every single detail that will be useful for an agency in intelligently booking site. Preferred list. You have enough. You make me feel insignificant by your big talk about your company. And then you ask me to put you on a preferred list and you don't even say please when you ask it. A prompt acknowledgement of this letter, even us your latest doings will be mutually helpful. You fool, you mail me a ship form letter, a letter scattered far and wide like the autumn leaves, and you have the gall to ask me, when I am worried about the mortgage and the holy ox and my blood pressure, to sit down and dictate a personal note acknowledging your form letter. And you ask me to do it promptly. What do you mean promptly? Don't you know I am just as busy as you are? Or at least I like to think I am. And while we are on the subject, who gave you the lordly right to order me around? You say it will be mutually helpful. At last, at last, at last, you have begun to see my viewpoint, but you are vague about how it will be to my advantage. Now let's look at another letter. Very yours truly, John Doe, Manager, Radio Department, PS, the enclosed repeat for the Blackview journal will be of interest to you and you may want to broadcast it over your nation. Finally, down here in the postscript, you mentioned suddenly that help me solve one of my problems. Why don't you begin your letter with, but what's the use? Any advertising man who is guilty of perpetrating such drivel as you have sent me has something wrong with his medulla oblongata. You don't need a letter giving our latest doing. What you need is a cut of iodine in your thyroid gland. Now, if people would devote their lives to advertising and would pose as experts in the art of influencing people to buy, if you write a letter like that, what can you expect from the butcher and the baker of the audio tomato and economic? Here is another letter, written by the superintendent of a large freight terminal to a student of this course. Edward Vermeulen, what effect did this letter have on the man to whom it was addressed? Read it and then I'll tell you. Ezeriga's sons, gentlemen, the operations at our outbound rail receiving stations are handicapped because a material percentage of the total business is delivered to us in the late afternoon. This condition results in congestion, overtime on the part of our forces, delays to truck, and in some cases, delays to freight. On November 10, we received your company a lot of 510 pieces, which reached here at 4:20 p.m. We solicit your operation towards overcoming the undesirable effects arising from late receipt of freight. May we ask that, on days on which you ship the volume which was received on the above data, effort be made either to get the truck here earlier or to deliver us part of the freight during the morning. The advantage that would accrue to you under such an arrangement would be that of more expeditious discharge of your trucks and the assurance that your business would go forward on the date of its receipt. Very yours truly, J.B. Socks. After reading this letter, Mr. Vermeulen, sales manager for A. Zeriga's Son Inc., sent it to me with the following comment. This letter had a reverse effect from that which was intended. The letter begins by describing the terminal's difficulties, in which we are not interested, generally speaking. Our cooperation is then requested without any thought as to whether it will inconvenience us. And then finally, in the last paragraph, The fact is mentioned that if we do not cooperate, it will mean more expeditious discharge of our truck with the assurance that our flight will go forward on the date of its receipt. In other words, that in which we are most interested is mentioned last, and the whole effect is one of raising a spirit of antagonism rather than that of cooperation. Let's see if we can't rewrite and improve this lesson. Let's not waste any time talking about our problems. As Henry Ford admonishes, let's get the other person's point of view and see things from his or her angle as well as from our own. Here is one way of revisiting the letter. It may not be the best way, but isn't it an improvement? Mr. Edward Vermeulen. Dear Mr. Vermeulen, your company has been one of our good customers for 14 years. Naturally, we are very grateful for your patronage and very eager to give you the speedy, efficient service you deserve. However, we regret to say that it isn't possible for us to do that when your truck brings us a large shipment late in the afternoon, as they did on November 10th, because many other customers make late afternoon deliveries also. Naturally, that causes congestion. That means your truck are held up unavoidably at the pier, and sometimes even your freight is delayed. That's bad, but it can be avoided. If you make your deliveries at the pier in the morning when possible, your trucks will be able to keep moving. Your friends will get immediate attention, and our workers will get home early at night to enjoy a dinner of the delicious macaroni and noodles that you manufacture. Regardless of when your shipments arrive, we shall always cheerfully do all in our power to serve you promptly. You are busy. Please don't trouble to answer this note. Barbara Henderson, who worked in a bank in New York, desired to move to Phoenix, Arizona because of the health of her son. Using the principles she had learned in our course, she wrote the following letter to 12 banks in Phoenix. Dear Sir, my 10 years of bank experience should be of interest to a rapidly growing bank like yours. In various capacities in bank operations with the Bankers Trust Company in New York, leading to my present assignment as branch manager, I have acquired skills in all phases of banking, including depositor relations, credit, loans, and administrations. I will be relocating to Phoenix in May, and I am sure I can contribute to your growth and profit. I will be in Phoenix the next week of April 3 and would appreciate the opportunity to show you how I can help your bank meet its goal. Do you think Mrs. Anderson received any response from that letter? 11 of the 12 banks invited her to the interview, and she had a choice of which bank to offer to accept. Why? Mrs. Anderson did not tell us what she wanted, but wrote in the letter how she could help them and focused on their wants, not their own. Not her own. Thousands of salespeople are pounding the pavements today, tired, discouraged, and underpaid. Why? Because they are always thinking of only what they want. They don't realize that neither you nor I want to buy anything. If we did, we would go out and buy it. But both of us are eternally interested in solving our problems. And if salesperson can show us how their service or merchandise will help us solve our problems, they won't need to sell us, we will buy. And customers like to feel like they are paying, not being sold. Yes, many salespeople they spend a lifetime in selling without seeing things from the customer's angle. For example, for many years I lived in Forest Hills, a little community of private homes in the center of Greater New York. One day, as I was rushing to the station, I chanced to meet a real estate operator who had bought and sold property in that its area for many years. In New Forest Hills well, so I hurriedly asked him whether or not my so-called house was built with mental art or hollow. He said he didn't know and told me what I already knew, that I would find out by calling the Forest Hills Garden Association. The following morning, I received a letter from him. Did he give me the information I wanted? He could have gotten it in 60 seconds by a telephone call, but he didn't. He told me again that I could go I could get it by telephoning and then ask me to let him handle my insurance. He was not interested in helping me. He was interested only in helping himself. J. Howard Lucas of Birmingham, Alabama, tells how to salespeople from the same company handle the same type of situation. He reported, "Several years ago, I was on the management team of a small company. Headquartered near us was the district office of a large insurance company. Their agents were assigned terrorists, and our company was assigned to two agents, whom, whom I shall refer to as Carl and John. One morning, Carl dropped by our office and casually mentioned that his company had just introduced a new life insurance policy for executives and thought we might be interested in it. The same day, John saw us on the sidewalk while returning from a coffee break and I shouted, 'Hey, look, hold up. I have some great news for you fellows.' He hurried over and very excitedly told us about an executive life insurance policy his company had introduced that very day. It was the same policy that Carl had casually mentioned. He wanted us to have one of the first issued. He gave us a few important facts about the coverage and ended saying, 'The policy is so new. I am going to have someone from the home office come out tomorrow and explain it. Now, in the meantime, let's get the application signed and on the way so you can have more information to work with.' His enthusiasm aroused in us an eager want for this policy, even though we still did not have details. When they were made available to us, they confirmed John's initial understanding of the policy, and he not only sold each of us a policy but later doubled our coverage. Carl could have had these sales, but he made no effort to arouse in us any desire for the policies. The world is full of people who are grabbing and self-seeking. So the rare individual who unselfishly strives to serve others has an enormous advantage. He has little competition. Owen the young noted lawyer and one of America's great business leaders, once said, "People who can put themselves in the place of other people, who can understand the workings of their mind, need never worry about what the future has in store for them." If out of reading this book you get just one thing, an increased tendency to think always in terms of other people's point of view and see things from their angle. If you get that one thing out of this book, it may easily prove to be one of the building blocks of your career. People who can put themselves in the place of other people, people who can understand the workings of their minds, need never never worry about what the future has in store for them. If one out of reading this book could get just one thing, it increased tendency to think always in terms of other people's point of view and you see things from their angle. If you get if you get that one thing out of this book, it may be easily be proved to be one of the building blocks of your career. Another example in which everybody gains through this principle of arousing and eager wants comes from Michael E. Wheaton of Warwick, Rhode Island, who is a territory salesman for the Shell Oil Company. Mike wanted to become the number one salesperson in his district, but one service station was holding him back. It was a run by an older man who could not be motivated to clean up his station. It was such poor shape that sales were declining significantly. This manager would not listen to any of Mike's pleas to upgrade the nation. After many hesitations and heart-to-heart talks, all of which had no impact, Mike decided to invite the manager to visit the newest Shell station in his territory. The manager was so impressed by the facilities at the new station that when Mike visited him the next time, his station was cleaned up and had recorded a sales increase. This enabled Mike to reach the number one spot in his district. All his talking and discussion hadn't up, but by arousing an eager want in the manager, by showing him the modern station, he had accomplished his goal, and both the manager and Mike benefited. Most people go through college and learn to read Virgil and master the mysteries of calculus without ever discovering how their own minds function. For instance, I once gave a course in effective speaking for the young college graduates who were entering the employ of the Carrier Corporation, the large air conditioner manufacturer. One of the participants wanted to persuade the others to play football in their free time, and this is about what he said. I want you to come out and play basketball. I like to play basketball, but the last few times I have been to the gymnasium, they have there haven't been enough people to get up again. Two or three of us got by throwing the ball around the other night, and I got a black eye. I wish all of you would come down tomorrow night. I want to play basketball. Did he talk about anything you want? You don't want to go to a gymnasium that no one else goes to, do you? You don't care about what you want. You don't want to get a black eye. Could he have shown you how to get the things you want by using the gymnasium? Surely. More pep, keener edge to the appetite, clearer brain, fun, games, foot, basketball. To repeat Professor Overstreet's advice, first, arouse in the other person an eager want. He who can do this has the whole world with him. He who cannot walks a lonely way. One of the students in the author's training course was worried about his little boy. The child was overweight. The child was underweight and refused to eat properly. His parents used the usual method. They scolded and nagged. Mother wants you to eat this and that. Father wants you to grow up to be a big man. Did the boy pay any attention to this place? Just about as much as you pay to one flake of sand on a sandy beach. No one with a trace of all sense would expect a child 3 years old to react to the viewpoint of a father 30 years old. Yet, that was precisely what the father had expected. It was absurd. He finally saw that, so he said to himself, what does that boy want? How can I tie up what I want to what he wants? It was easy for the father when he started thinking about it. His boy had a tricycle that he loved to ride up and down the sidewalk in front of the house in Brooklyn. A few doors down the street lived a bully, a bigger boy who would pull the little boy off his tricycle and ride it himself. Naturally, The little boy would run screaming to his mother, and she would have to come out and take the bully off the tricycle and put her little boy on again. This happened almost every day. What did the little boy want? It didn't take a Sherlock Holmes to answer that one. His pride, his anger, his desire for a feeling of importance, all the strongest emotions in his makeup, goaded him to get revenge, to smash the bully in the nose. And when his father explained that the boy would be able to wallop the daylight out of the bigger kid someday if he would only eat the things his mother wanted him to eat. When his father promised him that there was no longer any problem of dietetics, that boy would have enough spinach, salt mackerel, anything in order to be big enough to whip the bully who had humiliated him so often. After solving that problem, the parents tackled another. The little boy had the unholy habit of wetting his bed. He slept with his grandmother. In the morning, his grandmother would wake up and feel the sheet and said, "Look, Johnny, what you did again last night." He would say, "No, I didn't do it. You did it." Scolding, spanking, shaming him, reiterating that the parents didn't want him to do it. None of these things kept the bed dry. So the parents asked, "How can we make this boy want to stop wetting his bed?" What were his wants? First, he wanted to wear pajamas like daddy instead of wearing a nice gown like grandmother. Grandmother was getting fed up with his nocturnal iniquities, so she gladly offered to buy him a pair of pajamas if he would reform. Second, he wanted a bed of his own. Grandmother didn't object. His mother took him to a apartment store in Brooklyn, winked at the sales girl and said, "Here is a little gentleman who would like to do some shopping." The sales girl made him feel important by saying, Young man, what can I show you?" He stood a couple of inches taller and said, "I want to buy a bed for myself." When he was shown the one his mother wanted him to buy, she winked at the sales girl and the boy was persuaded to buy it. The bed was delivered the next day, and that night, when father came home, the little boy ran to the door shouting, "Daddy, Daddy, come upstairs and see my bed that I bought." The father, looking at the bed, obeyed Charles Schwab's injunction. He was hearty in his appreciation and lavish in his praise. "You are not going to wear this bed, are you?" "Oh, no, no, I am not going to wet this bed." The boy kept his promise, for his pride was involved. That was his bed. He and he alone had bought it, and he was wearing pajamas now like a little man. He wanted to act like a man, and he did. Another father, Katie Dashman, a telephone engineer, a student of this course, couldn't get his 3-year-old daughter to eat breakfast food. The usual scolding, pleading, coaxing method had all ended in futility. So the parents asked themselves, how can we make her want to do it? The little girl loved to imitate her mother, to feel big and grown up. So one morning, they put her in a chair and let her make the breakfast food. At just the psychological moment, father drifted into the kitchen while she was stirring the cereal and she said, "Oh, look, Daddy, I am making the cereal this morning." She ate 2 helpings of the cereal without any coaxing because she was interested in it. She had achieved a feeling of importance. She had found in making the cereal an avenue of self-expression. William Winter once remarked that self-expression is the dominant necessity of human nature. Why can't we adapt the same psychology to business dealings? When we have a brilliant idea, instead of making others think it is ours, why not let them cook and steer the idea themselves? They will then regard it as their own. They will like it and maybe eat a couple of helpings on it. Remember, first arrows in the other person and eager ones. He who can do this has the whole world within. He who can't walks a lonely way. Principle arose in the other person and eager ones. So, in a nutshell, fundamental techniques in handling people, we have principle one, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Principle two, give honest and sincere appreciation. Principle three, arouse in the other person and eager ones. Part 2: 6 Ways to Make People Like You. Do this and you will be welcome anyway. Why read this book to find out how to win friends? Why not study the technique of the greatest winner of friends the world has ever known? Who is he? You may meet him tomorrow coming down the street. When you get within 10 feet of him, you will begin to wag his tail. If you stop and pat him, he will almost jump out of his skin to show you how much he likes you. And you know that behind this show of affection on his part, there are no ulterior motives. He doesn't want you to sell you any real estate, and he doesn't want to marry you. Did you ever stop to think that a dog is the only animal that doesn't have to work for a living? A hen has to lay eggs, a cow has to give milk, and a canary has to sing. But a dog makes his living by giving you nothing but love. When I was 5 years old, my father bought a little yellow-haired pup for 50 cents. It was the light and joy of my childhood. Every afternoon about 4:30, it would sit in the front yard with its beautiful eyes staring steadfastly at the path. And as soon as he heard my voice or saw me swinging my dinner pail through the book rush, he was off like a shot, racing breathlessly up the hill to greet me with leaps of joy and barks of sheer ecstasy. CP was my constant companion for 5 years. Then one tragic night, I shall never forget it, he was killed within 10 feet of my head, killed by lightning. CP's death was the tragedy of my boyhood. You never read a book on psychology, TP. You didn't need to. You knew by some divine instinct that if you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming genuinely interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. Let me repeat this. You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. Yet, I know and you know people who blunder through life trying to wigwag other people into becoming interested in them. Of course, it doesn't work. People are not interested in you. They are not interested in me. They are interested in themselves. Morning, noon, and after dinner. The New York Telephone Company made a detailed study of telephone conversations to find out which word is the most frequently used. You have guessed it. It is the personal pronoun I was used 3,000 times, 3,900 times in 500 telephone conversations. I. When you see a group photograph that you are in, whose picture do you look for first? If we mainly try to impress people and get people interested in us, we will never have many true, sincere friends. Friends, real friends, are not made that way. Napoleon tried it, and in his last meeting with Josephine, he said, Josephine, I have been as fortunate as any man ever was this on this earth, and yet at this hour, you are the only person in the world on whom I can rely. And historians doubt whether he could rely even on her. Alfred Adler, the famous Viennese psychologist, wrote a book entitled What Life Should Mean to Me. In this book, it says, it is the individual who is not interested in his fellow men who has the greatest difficulties of life and provides the greatest injury to others. It is from among such individuals that all human failures spring. You may read scores of erudite tomes on psychology without coming across a statement more significant for you and me. Adler's statement is so rich with meaning that I am going to repeat it in its legs. It is the individual who is not interested in his fellow men who has the greatest difficulties in life and provides the greatest injury to others. It is from among such individuals that all human failures spring. I once took a course in short story writing at New York University, and during that course, the editor of a leading magazine talked to our class. He said he could pick up any one of the dozens of stories that drifted across his deck every day. And after reading a few paragraphs, you could feel whether or not the author liked people. If the author doesn't like people, he said people won't like his or her stories. This ad board editor stopped twice in the course of his talk on fiction writing and apologized for preaching his sermon. I am telling you, he said, the same things one of your preachers will tell you, but remember, you have to be interested in people if you want to be a successful writer of stories. If that is true of writing fiction, what you can be so sure it is true if of dealing with people face to face. I spent an evening in the dressing room of Howard Thompson the last time we appeared on a Broadway. Thurston was the acknowledged dean of magicians. For 40 years, he had revealed himself. He had traveled all over the world, time and again, creating illusions, mystifying audiences, and making people gasp with astonishment. People had paid admission to his show, and he had made almost $2 million in profits. I asked Mr. Thompson to tell me the secret of his success. I'm coming, guys. Well, I asked Mr. Thurston to tell me the secret of his success. His schooling certainly had nothing to do with it, for he ran away from home as a small boy, became a hobo, rode in buscars, slept in haystacks, pecked his food from door to door, and learned to read by looking out the buscars at signs along the hallway. Did he have a superior knowledge of magic? No. He told me hundreds of books had been written about legerdemain, and scores of people knew as much about it as he did. But he had two things that the others didn't have. First, he had the ability to put his personality across the footlights. He was a master showman. His knew human nature. Everything he did, every gesture, every intonation of his voice, every lifting of an eyebrow had been carefully rehearsed in advance, and his actions were timed to split seconds. But in addition to that, Justin had a genuine interest in people. He told me that many magicians would sing at the audience and say to themselves, well, there's a bunch of suckers out there, a bunch of hicks, and I'll fool them all right. But Justin's method was totally different. He told me that every time he went on stage, he said to him straight to himself, I am grateful because these people come to see me. They make it possible for me to make my living in a very agreeable way. I'm going to give them the very best I possibly can. He declared he never stepped in front of the footlights without first saying to himself over and over, I love my audience. I love my audience. Ridiculous, abused, You are privileged to think anything you like. I am merely passing it on to you, which can make it as the recipe used by one of the most famous magicians of all time. George Dyke of North Warren, Pennsylvania, was forced to retire from his service station business after 30 years when a new highway was constructed over the site of the station. It wasn't long before the idle days of retirement began to bore him. So he started feeling inside trying to play music and talk with many of the accomplished fiddlers. In his humble and friendly In his humble and friendly way, he became gradually interested in learning the background and interests of every musician he met. Although he was not a great fiddler himself, he made many friends in this pursuit. He attended competitions and soon became known to the country music fans in the eastern part of the United States as Uncle George, the fiddle scraper from Kingswell County. When we had Uncle George, he was 72 and enjoying every minute of his life by having a sustained interest in people. And he created a new life for himself at a time when most people consider their productive years over. That too was one of the secrets of Theodore Roosevelt's astonishing popularity. Even his servants loved him. His valet, James E. Amos, wrote a book about him entitled Theodore Roosevelt, Hero to His Valet. In that book, Amos relates this illuminating incident. My wife one time asked the president about a Bob White. She had never seen one and he described it to her fully. Sometimes later, the telephone at our cottage rang. Amos Adewife and his wife lived in a little cottage on the Roosevelt estate at Oyster Bay. My wife answered it and it was Mr. Roosevelt himself. He had called her, he said, to tell her that there was a Bob White outside her window and that if she would look out, she might see it. Little things like that were so characteristic of him. Whenever he went by our cottage, even though we were out of sight, we would hear him call out, "Ho ho ho, honey," or "Ho ho ho, James." It was just a friendly greeting as he went by. How could employees keep from liking a man like that? How could anyone keep from liking him? Because called at the White House one day when the president and Mrs. Taft were away. He honest, his honest liking for other people was shown by the fact that he greeted all the old white servants by the name, even the scullery maid. Roosevelt called at the White House one day when the president and Mrs. Taft were away. His honest liking for humble people was shown by the fact that he greeted all the old White House servants by name, even the scullery maid. But when he saw Alice, the kitchen maid, right after birth, he asked her if she still made her cornbread. Alice told him that she sometimes made it for the servants, but no one ate it upstairs. The show bad taste, Roosevelt groaned, and I will tell the president so when I see him. Ali brought a piece to him on a plate and he went over to the office, eating it as he went and greeting gardeners and laborers as he passed. He addressed each person just as he had addressed them in the past, like Hoover, who had been head usher at the White House for 40 years, said with tears in his eyes. It is only happy days we had in nearly 2 years, and not one of us would exchange it for $100 bill. The same concern for the seemingly unimportant people helped civil representative Edward M. Sykes, Jr. of Chatham, New Jersey, retain an account. Many years ago, he reported, I called on customers for Johnson and Johnson in the Massachusetts area. One account was a drugstore in Ingham. Whenever I went into the store, I would always talk to the soda clerk and sales clerk for a few minutes before talking to the owner to obtain his order. One day, I went up to the owner of the store and he told me to leave as he was not interested in buying because I felt they were threatening their activities on food and discount stores to the detriment of the small drugstore. I left with my pail between my legs and drove around the town for several hours. Finally, I decided to go back and try to at least extend our position in the owner of the store. When I returned, I walked in and as usual said hello to the soda clerk and sales clerk. When I walked up to the owner, he smiled at me and welcomed me back. He then gave me double the usual order. I looked at him with surprise and asked him what had happened since my visit only a few hours earlier. He pointed to the young man at the soda fountain and said that after I had left, the boy had come over and said that I was one of the few salespeople that called on the store that even bothered to say hello to him and to the others in the store. He told the owner that if any salesperson deserved his business, it was I. The owner agreed and remained a loyal customer. I never forgot that to be genuinely interested in other people is the most important quality for a salesperson to possess, for any person for that matter. I have discovered from personal experience that one can win the attention and time and cooperation of even the most sought after people by becoming genuinely interested in them. Let me illustrate. Years ago, I conducted a course in fiction, writing at the Brooklyn Institute of Art and Science, and we wanted such distinguished and busy authors as Kathleen Norris, Fanny Ost, Ida Tabel, Howard Spacing, and Rupert Bush to come to Brooklyn and give us the benefit of their experiences. So we wrote to them, saying we admired their work and were deeply interested in getting their advice and learning the secrets of their success. Each of these letters was signed by about 130 residents. We said we realized that these authors were busy, too busy to prepare a lecture. So we enclosed a list of questions for them to answer about themselves and their method of work. They like that. Who wouldn't like that? So they left their homes and traveled to Brooklyn to give us a helping hand. By using the same method, I persuaded Leslie M. Shaw, Secretary of the Treasury in Theodore Roosevelt's cabinet, George Wickersham, Attorney General in Taft's cabinet, William Jennings Bryan, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and many other prominent men to come to talk to the students of my courses in public speaking. All of us, be we workers in a factory, clerks in an office, or even a king upon his throne, all of us like people who admire us. Take the German Kaiser, for example. At the close of World War One, he was probably the most savagely and universally despised man on this earth. Even his own nation turned against him when he fled over when he fled when he fled over Holland to save his neck. The hatred against him was so intense that millions of people would have loved to tear him limb from limb or burn him down at the stake. In the midst of all this forest fire of fury, one little boy wrote the Kaiser a simple skincare, sincere letter glowing with kindness and admiration. This little boy said that no matter what the others thought, he would always love William as his emperor. The Kaiser was all The Kaiser was deeply touched by this letter and invited the little boy to come and to see him. The little boy came, so did his mother, and the Kaiser married her. The little boy didn't need to read a book on how to win friends and influence people. He knew how instinctively. If we want to make friends, let's put ourselves out to do things for other people, things that require time, energy, unselfishness, and thoughtfulness. When the Duke of Windsor was Prince of Wales, he was scheduled to tour South America, and before he started out on that tour, he spent months studying Spanish so that he could make public talks in the language of the country. And the South American loved him for it. For years, I made it a point to find out the birthday of my friends. How, although I haven't been the biggest bit of faith in astrology, I began by asking the other party with whether he believed the date of one's birth has anything to do with character and disposition. I then asked him or her to tell me the month and day of birth. If he or she said November 24, for example, I kept repeating to myself, November 24, November 24. The minute my friend's back was turned, I wrote down the name and birthday and later I would transfer it to a birthday book. At the beginning of this year, I had this birthday date scheduled in my calendar pad so that they came to my attention automatically. When the natal day arrived, there was my letter or telegram. Was it a hit it made? I was frequently the only person on earth who remembered. If we want to make friends, let's greet people with animation and enthusiasm. When somebody calls you on the telephone, use the same psychology. Say hello in tones that bespeak how pleased you are to have the person call. Many companies train their telephone operators to greet all callers in a tone of voice that radiates interest and enthusiasm. The caller feels the company is concerned about them. Let's remember it. But when we answer the telephone tomorrow, showing a genuine interest in others not only win friends to you, but may develop in its customs a loyalty to your company. In an issue of the publication of the National Bank of North America of New York, the following letter from Madeleine Rosedale, a depositor, was published. I would like you to know how much I appreciate your staff. Everyone is so courteous, polite, and helpful. What a pleasure it is, after waiting on a long time, to have the teller greet you pleasantly. Last year, my mother was hospitalized for 5 months. Eventually, frequently, I went to the Mary Pesucello, a teller. She was concerned about my mother and inquired about her progress. Is there any doubt that Mrs. Rosedale will continue to use this bank? Match featuring Charles R. Waters of one of the large banks in New York City was assigned to prepare a confidential report on a certain operation. He knew of only one person who possessed the facts he needed so urgently. As Mr. Waters was ushered into the president's office, a young woman snuck her head through a door and told the president that she didn't have any stamps for him that day. I'm collecting stamps for my 12-year also. The president explained. The interview was brief and barren. Frankly, I didn't know what to do, Mr. Waters said as he related the story to the class. Then I remembered what his secretary had said to him. Stamps, 12 years old son. And I also recalled that foreign department of our bank collected stamps taken from letters pouring in from every continent washed by the seven seas. The next afternoon, I called on this man and I sent in words that I had some stamps for the day. Was I shaking? Yes, sir. He couldn't have shaken my hand with more enthusiasm if he had been running for Congress. He radiated smile and goodwill. My judge will love this one, he kept saying as he folded the stamps. And look at this. This is a treasure. We spent half an hour talking stamps and looking at picture of the boy, and then he devoted more than an hour of his time to giving me every bit of information I wanted, without my even suggesting that he do it. He could He told me all he knew and then called me in his subordinates and questioned them. He telephoned some of his associates. He loaded me down with facts, figures, reports, and correspondence. In the parlance of newspaper reporters, I had a scoop. Here is another illustration. C.M. Canafee Jr. of Philadelphia had tried for years to sell fuel to a large chain store organization, but the chain store company continued to purchase its fuel from an out of town company. Principle 1. Become genuinely interested in other people. C.M. Knafi Jr. of Philadelphia had tried for years to sell fuel to a large chain store organization, but the chain store company continued to purchase its fuel from an out-of-town dealer and had all its rights past the door of Knafie's office. Mr. Knafiel made a speech one night about before one of my classes, pouring out his utter wrath upon chain stores, branding them as a curse to the nation, and still he wondered why he couldn't sell them. I suggested that he try different tactics. To put it briefly, this is what happened. We staged a debate between members of the cause on whether the spread of the chain store is doing the country more harm than good. Knafiel, at my suggestion, took the negative side. He agreed to defend the chain store and then went straight to an executive of the chain store organization that he despised and said, I am not here to try to sell fuel. I have come to ask you to do me a favor. It is then told about this debate and said, I have come to you for help because I can't think of anyone else who could be more capable of giving me the facts I want. I am anxious to win this debate, and I deeply appreciate whatever help you can give me. Here is the rest of the story in Mr. Nafi's own word. I had asked this man for precisely 1 minute of his time. It was with that understanding that he consented to see me. After I had stated my case, no emotion, he motioned me to a chair and talked to me for exactly 1 hour and 45 minutes. He called in another executive who had written a book on chain stores. He wrote to the National Chain Store Association and secured for me a copy of a debate on the subject. He feels that if he didn't chain store, he feels that the chain store is rendering a real service to humanity. That's nice. He is proud of what he is doing for hundreds of communities. His eyes fairly glowed as he talked, and I must confess that he opened my eyes to things I had never even dreamed of. As I was leaving, he walked with me to the door, put his arm around my shoulder, wished me well in my debate, and asked me to stop in and see him again and let him know how I made out. The last word he said to me were, please see me again later in the spring. I should like to place an order with you for fall. To me, that was almost a miracle. Yet it was offering to buy fuel without my even suggesting it. I had made more headway in 2 hours by becoming genuinely interested in him and his problems that I could have made in 10 years trying to get him interested in me and my products. You didn't discover a new truth. Mr. Naphtali, for a long time ago, 100 years before Christ was born, a famous old Roman poet, publisher Cyrus, remarked, "We are interested in others when they are interested in us." A show of interest, as with every other principle of human relations, must be sincere. It must pay off not only for the purpose of showing the interest, but for the person receiving the attention. It is a two-way street. Both parties benefit. Martin Ginsberg, who took our course in Long Island, New York, reported how the special interest a nurse took in him profoundly affected his life. It was Thanksgiving Day and I was 10 years old.